kunja-vihari Jaya Radha Madhava kunja-vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yaśodā Nandana Brajajana Yaśodā Nandana Brajajana Jamuna Tiravanam Chadi Jamuna Tiravanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava kunja-vihari Madhava kunja-vihari Jaya Radha Madhava kunja-vihari Madhava kunja-vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yaśodā Nandana Brajajana Yaśodā Nandana Brajajana Jamuna Tiravanam Chadi Jamuna Tiravanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava kunja-vihari Jaya Radha Madhava kunja-vihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Srimad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavarinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Nandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Let's see here. We're continuing Canto 10, Chapter 11, with texts 14 and 15. And here's the translation. This is Jiva Goswami's commentary from Krama-sandarbha. O pious Mother Yaśodā, your son, who is expert in all the arts of herding cows, has invented many new styles of flute playing. When he takes his flute to his bimba-red lips and sends forth the tones of the harmonic scale in variegated melodies, Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and other chief devatas listen repeatedly to the sound. Although they are the most learned authorities, with hearts in submission, they cannot ascertain the meaning and forget everything. So here's his commentary. This is his 10th canto only commentary. A devoted group of listeners is addressed. Yaśodā, included in the group, is also praised during the narration of pastimes. The gopis speak of the flute with its special effects, which even influence her when she worries about her son returning late. When the afternoon passes, the gopis, while worrying why he is late, console her. So the younger gopis console her and encourage her by describing his absorption in skillful, astonishing pastimes while hiding their own rasa with him. And the comment says, Vatsalya rasa and Madhurya rasa do not mix well. Quote, his flute sound ends up spreading everywhere. Unquote. The best devatas, who are endowed with great musical knowledge from the Gandharvas, who are skillful at music themselves, kavaya, listen. And Jiva Goswami, in his Krishna-sandarbha, begins by saying, this text 170, or section, Anuchhed 177. This is Garga's general statement. This Maya, who serves Krishna, can produce any type of protection, like the household fire of Rama, which protects Sita. So it's going to, that's the introductory statement. He's going to expand on the potency of Krishna, the energy of Krishna, the Maya of Krishna. It can do anything that he wants. And he gives as the example, household fire of Rama protects Sita. Paragraph. The spiritual forms, or Swarup Siddha of the gopis, were present when they spoke to Yaśodā in this text 14. Their spiritual forms were present when they stopped serving their husbands and children. And Canto 10, Chapter 29, Text 7, that's the Gopi Gita section. Here's the translation of that. We'll go back. So they're manifesting spiritual forms while they're speaking to Yaśodā. They're in their spiritual forms when they stop serving their husbands and children. And the translation there reads, some of them were getting dressed, feeding milk to their infants, or rendering personal service to their husbands, but they gave up all these duties and went to meet Krishna. Other gopis were taking their evening meals, washing themselves, putting on cosmetics, or applying cudgel to their eyes, but the gopis stopped these activities at once. And though their clothes and ornaments were in complete disarray, rushed off to Krishna. So this is a standard comment by our acharyas. Here it's Jiva Goswami speaking it, that their spiritual bodies were left behind, their material bodies were left behind, they joined Krishna in their spiritual bodies. Doesn't give the technology of how that happens, but that's what the commentary says. And the spiritual forms of the gopis were manifest when they were prevented from joining Krishna. That's the next text, number 8 from chapter 29, which reads, their husbands, fathers, brothers, and other relatives tried to stop them, but Krishna had already stolen their hearts. Enchanted by the sound of his flute, they refused to turn back. Paragraph. The spiritual forms were concealed when getting married and sleeping with their apparent husbands. This happened at other times in relation to others also. This was suitable for Maya, since her only goal, Maya's goal, Krishna's potencies, was to increase longing and protect their morality. They weren't breaching morality because they went in their spiritual forms. And going back to the initial statement, Krishna's Maya, Supreme Lord Maya, can do anything, like protecting Sita by the sacrificial fire, the daily ritual to protect Sita. So Krishna's Maya can do anything. So his Maya, Krishna's Maya, was protecting the gopis to protect their morality, and was also increasing the longing of the gopis. Interesting. Jiva Goswami writes in Priti Sandarbha, the excellence of the sweet pastimes has been shown. This is now Braja, the sweetness feature of the Braja Lila. Since the sweet pastimes are more enjoyable for Krishna, though he simultaneously can perform various types of pastimes, the previously shown pastimes appear most sweet for Shukadev, Shiva, and Brahma. And then he gives references to support that statement. One comes from the next chapter, 12, where it says, 12, verse 11, quote, in this way, with an abundance of splendor caused by Krishna, they played with him, this is the cowherd boys going out, who was pure consciousness, known as Brahman for the Gyanis, who was the supreme Lord for the devotees with dasya bhav, and who was an ordinary human child for those covered by material illusion. And then this verse 14, 15. O pious Mother Yaśodā, your son, who is expert in all the arts of herding cows, has invented many new styles of flute playing. When he takes his flute to his bimba-red lips and sends forth tones of the harmonic scale in variegated melodies, Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and other chief devatas listen repeatedly to the sound. Although they are most learned authorities, with hearts in submission, they cannot ascertain the meaning and forget everything. This is the emphasis now on sweetness. They became bewildered by Krishna's sweetness. Playing as a human, Krishna performs pastimes of dharma, which gained respect of ordinary people. These appear sweet for devotees with a strong taste for dharma, but this is not the same as the sweetness experienced by Shukadeva and others. Example, Canto 10, Chapter 69. O Brahmana, Krishna speaks to Narada Muni, Chapter 69. I am the speaker of religion, its performer and sanctioner. I observe religious principles to teach them to the world, my child, so do not be disturbed. Narada obtained happiness by seeing various pastimes. Narada Muni became filled with bliss, but he felt pain on seeing Krishna perform pastimes of Dharma. Thus, Krishna speaks in this way to him. And I'm not certain, but I think that's Narada's visit to Dwarka, chapter 69. More is Baladev Vidyabhusan's commentary on Lagu Bhagavatamrita in reference to our verses 14, 15. It's Baladev commentary. This verse is cited in Lagu Bhagavatamrita, O pious mother, your son, etc. So here's Baladev's commentary. This is a statement made by the gopis. O pious queen Yaśodā, or Sati, your son Krishna is skillful at various pastimes with the cowherd boys. When the flute placed on his red lips produces the various notes, making music of various types, which are not learned from anyone else, the devatas hearing that music become repeatedly bewildered, though they are learned and have previously determined the highest blissful truth. But how has the flute sound become the highest truth now? Now they are doubtful about their previous convictions. Aniścita-tattvāḥ. They thus bow down their heads and hearts to the source of that sound. Ānata-kandhara-cittāḥ. The flute sound does not exist at all in Dwarka, Krishna. Thus, this is an outstanding type of sweetness. Lagu Bhagavatamrita commentary. Here is Sanatana Goswami making reference to this in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Brahma, Rudra, Indra, Chandra, the Siddhas, and other demigods moving in the sky were overcome by changes aroused in them by the current of ecstatic love. So too were the cows, bulls, calves, wild beasts, trees, birds, bushes, creepers, and grass. The rivers were overcome, and the clouds, and all other beings, both moving and non-moving, alive and inert. Each of them underwent transformation by which their own nature changed into a nature just the opposite. And Sanatana Goswami's commentary. From the demigods to the blades of grass, every living being present in Vrindavan to see Krishna's pastimes became ecstatically transformed. Even non-living objects gained consciousness and underwent these effects of prema bhakti. In the sky, above Vrindavan, celestial persons often gathered to watch what was going on, and including not only the chief demigods, but also sages, Gandharvas, and Vidyadharas. They and all the residents of Brajadam were so powerfully affected by the constant flood of prema that their natures changed. Those who were accustomed to staying in heaven were attracted to come down to the earth. Brahma and the other prominent demigods, the wisest and most respected authorities in all fields of knowledge, lost their power of discrimination and became like simple fools. And the cows and other animals who normally roamed the fields seemed to achieve samadhi, the culmination of mystic knowledge. Those animals stood like immobile plants, whereas the plants, such as the trees, bushes, and creepers, became like animals, trembling and moving about. The lifeless rivers and lakes became as if alive, overflowing with ecstasy. They sometimes stopped their currents completely and sometimes flowed wildly. And in the sky, the wind-blown clouds became fixed in one place, assuming the roles of umbrellas, shading Krishna and his devotees from the sun. These wonders are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, and it quotes our verse 14:15, "O pious Mother Yaśodā, your son, who is expert in the arts of herding cows." I'll read because this is the end. "Has invented many new styles of flute playing. When he takes his flute to his bimba-red lips and sends forth the tones of the harmonic scale in variegated melodies, Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and other chief demigods become confused upon hearing the sound. Although they are most learned authorities, they cannot ascertain the essence of that music, and thus they bow down their heads and hearts." The poetry of the Bhagavatam is quite beautiful. You know, hearing it again and again doesn't become boring. The poetry just inspires the vision. Or tomorrow morning, we'll be discussing Jiva Goswami's description of how all these things act as stimulations of ecstatic love. They awaken prema, and it's going to go through all the terminology, rasa, vibhava, and this and that. So even if we don't not so clear what the terms mean, he's going into specifically the special pastimes of Vrindavan, the sweetness of them, and what's unique about them that stimulates a particular kind of love that Krishna is experiencing and he's stimulating within his devotees. And there's others, and it's going to be very interesting, comparing to the material counterpart, compared to the Vaikuntha counterpart, compared to the Vrindavan counterpart. It's really a jewel, Jiva Goswami's Priti Sandarbha. I mean, where the Bhagavatam is taking the reader is to Braja Prem. And there's steps and there's similarities between this and that. Now, the Bhagavatam doesn't so much go into vibhav and sanchari bhav and udipana and alambana and all those terms. Rupa Goswami does. But it's there within the Bhagavatam, and it's like, a gold mine. Somebody that knows how to find gold in the earth, and they're going for it. And they're educating the audience how to go for the gold. And so as we're hearing, we can have an understanding, aside from how it's impacting the heart, we can understanding of what's going on. Now, all of these things, I was listening to the recording of Rabindra Swarup Prabhu's talk, the one on the Shikshashtaka, and the subject matter is really elevated in Shikshashtaka. So one of the questions is, how do we enter into it? When you don't feel qualified? And he gave a really nice answer. He said, if a doctor prescribes medicine, you can't say, "Oh, doctor, I don't have the qualification to take this medicine." It's medicine that goes through the ear, and so just the chanting of the holy name, everything is there. That's all we need. in offenseless chanting. It's the small offenseless chanting factor. But that doesn't mean we just chant and we don't hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We hear Srimad Bhagavatam and we hear the further explanation of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam by our exalted acharyas. And obviously, for the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Canto 10 gets special attention. We don't have the same volume of commentary on other cantos. I've begun looking ahead to Uddhava Gita, which will eventually we'll cover in the evening class. We'll continue here with, chapter by chapter with the 10th canto, but the evening class is going to become Uddhava Gita, and there's not nearly as much commentary. Although it's certainly important, it's Krishna speaking his final words. Bhagavad Gita has how much commentary? Over and over and over, because its accessibility and the explanation of Bhagavad Gita by exalted acharyas, leaving aside people that are speculators. Just the exalted acharyas, so much commentary and different refined meanings of texts from Bhagavad Gita. But this 10th canto has enormous commentary. That's why it's taking so long to just, like a whole week just to cover 2 verses, which is, it's stimulating. And it helps just hearing the verse recited again, the translation, hearing it again and hearing it again and hearing it again. The sweetness we start to appreciate more, the different words and the phrases and how they're acting to stimulate ecstatic love, and the poetry, thus Srimad. It's very beautiful. Beautiful Bhagavatam. And again, it's meant to carry us to that position. Braja Prem, the chanting of the holy name, is meant to carry us to that position, especially for followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, it doesn't have the same effect. It's the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, his followers, that carry us to Braja Prem, just from chanting. The potential is there. But others, they also, it's not like snobby, looking down at other people that also value the holy name in all religions of the world. This emphasis upon the holy name is there. Satyaraj wrote a book, detailing this religion, that religion, the other religion, and the emphasis they have in the name. It's not unique to ISKCON or Hare Krishna followers. There's emphasis on the name. But then there's experience, or the mature fruit of that is different, depending upon the association and the descending knowledge that comes, and so forth. Everything that we need is in the holy name. And another nice point that Rabindra was making is when we can become more, as we become more attentive, the attentiveness to the name means more attentiveness to everything in our life. Our life of devotion to Krishna becomes attentive to the purpose of our life of devotion. And that's what spiritual life means. It's connect to the higher purpose, and that means leaving behind the material, letting go, leaving it behind. Don't leave the activity behind, the purpose changes, and then the objects are seen and interacted with in a different way, because of the purpose, the spiritual awakening. So all variety is there, this consciousness changes. And so back to our 10th canto Bhagavatam, although everything is there in the holy name, we also have Srimad Bhagavatam because these topics are to be relished, and it helps us get clarity, focus on the goal, even when chanting, and in our interactions with one another. And then other teachings within the Vedas is kind of going down a little bit to something that's a little more accessible. Like, Vraja Prem is way up there, and we're just trying to be civilized human beings. So, like this discussion on varnashram and how to apply varnashram, it's not just for neophytes. It's to help us become successful in attaining Vraja Prem. There's obstacles carried in our subtle bodies that are impeding our connecting with Krishna. And so the beginning stages of varnashram is develop the qualities of a human being, because sometimes devotees don't behave like civilized human beings. I mean, it's just the carryover of their material contamination. It's not like finger pointing, it's just that happens. Harshness, anger, fault finding, and all kinds of things that are not nice. So, along with hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and its attainment of Vraja Prem, and trying to chant the holy name with attention so the mind becomes cleansed and thus it can focus, or like we discussed during the Festival of the Holy Name, to take this tendency of enthusiasm, which Prabhupada explains, or it's right in Narada Bhakti Sutra, it's of the soul. Enthusiasm is a factor of the soul, just like faith is of the soul. So it just has to be purified. So how do we purify enthusiasm? Well, let's become enthusiastic to become civilized human beings. Representative of our founder Acharya. So we don't speak harshly and become angry and do fault finding and backbiting and disrespecting and all those things that are carryovers from the package that we have from who knows how many lifetimes. So the best scrubbing device is the holy name and awakening of bhakti. And we, take some assistance by becoming mindful of what the good qualities of a human being are. Like this question sometimes arises, do you work on good qualities or you just do bhakti and then good qualities come? It's like, I see that as a false dilemma. Bhakti essence is please Krishna. So you want to, when you awaken the please Krishna desire or principle, then you want to become pleasing to Krishna. And bad qualities and harshness and fault-finding and backbiting and offending devotees, and that doesn't please Krishna. So we want to overcome that. So you cultivate for the pleasure of Krishna, on the basis of for the pleasure of Krishna. Then it's a bhakti lifestyle. That's just like the regular principles. Well, I'm chanting Hare Krishna, so I don't have to worry about regular principles. We follow regular principles, and then you just keep, besides the four pillars of sinful life are removed, then what about other civilized human being characteristics. We don't neglect them. But for the pleasure of Krishna, we cultivate them. Anyway, so this is taking this really high subject down to practical level. It's lovely to be inspired by this profound science. It's a science. There's lots of very, very clear scientific principles in the bhakti science. And it's in one sense, science, Prabhupada explains, it's hypothesis, experiment, observation, conclusion. That's the scientific method that everybody learns in school. So here's the hypothesis, here's the experiment, here's the observation. And you get the same result every time if you follow the experiment properly. You don't follow the experiment properly, you don't get the result. You don't get the same observation. But it's verifiable unlimitedly again and again. It's a spiritual science. So we're given that spiritual science, and hearing topics of Krishna tava katamritam tapta jivanam, it works. That's the heart of bhakti, shravanam kirtanam. And the other things are also corollary parts of bhakti. To please Krishna, we want to become civilized and overcome our shortcomings by Krishna's mercy. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion.
Couple questions, Guru Maharaj. You were speaking about the fact that Srimad Bhagavatam is taking the reader to Vraja Prema. So we hear that Bhagavad Gita, then there's Srimad Bhagavatam is the graduate study, and then the Chaitanya Charitamrita is the PhD or postgraduate study. So where is Chaitanya Charitamrita taking us? I mean, Vraja Prema is the highest. Is it just more elaboration on?
Yes. Yes. Postgraduate includes the graduate, and it just takes it into further elaboration with some focus on postgraduate in this area or that area, but the whole text is the postgraduate text. It's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifesting pastimes on that highest platform in conventional time, not just ancient time. But we'll hear some more about that tomorrow. Second?
You were mentioning that you're going to begin the Uddhava Gita, and these are the final words of Lord Krishna. We've been reading Canto 3 and reading how shattered Uddhava is, after Krishna leaves. So I was thinking of our current situation where we're feeling so much separation from Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and especially his disciples.
Yeah.
And yesterday you gave a beautiful...
And yet what?
Yesterday, when you addressed the disciples of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, your address was so beautiful and it was so soothing. And you mentioned this mood of separation and serving the spiritual master in this mood of separation. So in the material world, we have this gnawing feeling all the time. We may be in the presence of the spiritual master, but we know that at some point that separation will come. So is this the same spirit of separation that exists also in Goloka?
Well, a short answer is our feelings are mixed.
Yes.
And so it's like, but it's not the same. Because here it's mixed. Okay?
So even in Goloka, there's this sadness of separation. And
we'll hear it tomorrow. It's ecstasy. It looks like from our lens, it looks like it's ecstasy. And our lens can't see ecstasy. It looks like sadness. But that's the nature of transcendence. So to go from illusion to reality, it's ecstasy. No, I don't want that. Looks like material sadness, but it's not. And the material happiness is not the same as spiritual happiness either. Totally worlds apart. And then it can be like, the transition mixed thing. Okay? Someone will take the microphone and pass it. Who would like to speak something? Go on. You want to say something? Okay. Karunanidhi? But don't make somebody pass the microphone. You're next to stand up and pass the microphone, okay?
Sorry.
Okay. You're on.
Maharaj, so when we are trying to convince somebody something,
You're trying to convince someone?
something to someone, but he or she doesn't listen.
Doesn't receive.
So then at that stage, what you'll do?
What to do?
Yeah,
Smile.
that's right.
Pray to Krishna.
Thank you.
The goal is not to convince. The goal is to be an instrument of Krishna, and you present Krishna's message, with intelligence according to the audience, the person, circumstance, etc. Then, you smile means you can also look inside and say, how could I do better? How can I do better? How could I be more effective than, it's not going in? So one of the first and foremost places to look to is purity. Purity is the force. So because there's insufficient purity, it's not being effective. Let me become more pure. That's something you can work on. It doesn't require, gauging, maybe I should say this or do that or something. When purity is there, then that happens naturally. But purity means you're clear, you're an instrument, and Krishna's Shakti is flowing. And so that's not happening because I'm not pure. That's a project. It's a lifelong project, becoming pure. And even when one is pure, one still doesn't think I'm pure. That's, the nice news. So I've always have more to go. Let me become a better instrument. Okay. Prahlad, he spoke to three groups of people. His classmates, his teachers, and Hiranyakashipu. And for the classmates, it went through. But with the teachers, it didn't. And Hiranyakashipu, the opposite. But it wasn't a different person. He spoke straight up. And, they responded the way they responded. So it wasn't like, in his case, it wasn't lack of purity. It was, the receiver wasn't on for some. But at least from our side, it's not like get frustrated because they didn't have the receiver on. The sadhaka looks to purity. And so I'm just be an instrument, a better instrument than tomorrow, than today.
One more thing I'm trying to understand. You said like Srila Prabhupada quoted like observation, hypothesis, experiment, observation.
Yeah.
And I came across somewhere, that is knower, known, and knowledge. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he is saying observer, observed and process of observation. So I was trying to relate with the knowledge with the process of observation. So how to understand? I am not able to convince myself how these two words are related.
How to work on it?
Yeah, knowledge and process of observation.
Those are, the point that you're bringing up is important, and it's a little technical. So I would recommend, before trying to align the technical, you meditate upon it. This is just general advice, not even specific to this, but something that's a bit of a stretch because it's a little technical. Don't become Gyan Bhakti. You be inquisitive to try to understand, because that's something that Prabhupada advised. Try to understand, which is why you're asking the question, you're trying to understand. But while you're trying to understand, focus more on the bhakti principle that will enable you to understand than the trying to understand and the bhakti principles in the back seat. Or, forgotten. It's a material tendency to, it's good to want to know, it's of the soul. So now, that inquisitive spirit is good, trying to understand, that's good. All I'm responding, rather than the detail of this particular question as a principle, make sure you're driven by bhakti, not just by understanding another thing and understanding another thing, and okay, now I understand that one, let me move on. That's the ascending process. Don't go for the descending process. Okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, many times devotees say we should not jump to the 10th canto directly.
Should not do what?
Jump to the 10th canto directly.
Don't jump to the 10th canto.
Because it is like lotus face of Lord, considered as lotus face, and we should go from lotus feet like first and second canto.
Right.
So till the time we are not sufficiently purified to understand the pastimes of Lord. So what is your insight on this? Like we should read sometimes pastimes from 10th canto, or we should just continue our first and second canto?
Well, just before responding directly to your question, we're on the 10th canto because the temple started in the first canto and gradually worked its way up to the 10th canto. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And the decision could be, you know what, let's go back to the first canto. Because it's, we're not so qualified, so let's go back to the first canto, which is an option. But some temples don't do that. Some temples just keep going and, but aside from what the temple class schedule is doing, your question is broad. It's, should you sometimes read the 10th canto? Because it's lovely. I would just a general advice is same as what Prabhupada expresses. Make sure that you've comprehensively, thoroughly understood the earlier cantos. It's not like don't go there because you get, your hand slapped. But, the emphasis is the foundation before you go to something very elevated. And, something that will help you understand the earlier cantos is focusing on chanting of the holy name properly. So there's a place to put your attention, no question about it. And then study the earlier cantos very attentively under the guidance of someone that's experienced and will help you assimilate the message, and you do that primarily. And then here we are in the temple class in the 10th canto, so that's your few drops of 10th canto. Now you go back to the holy name in the earlier cantos under proper guidance. Okay? Online questions.
This is from Atulya Mataji. This is actually a question from Radha, a bit unrelated. Is Garuda immortal since he's the carrier of Krishna?
Yes. He's in Vaikuntha. He has spiritual form. Now he makes his appearance and so forth as other devotees that are eternal make their appearance, but he has his place in the spiritual world.
This is from Subal Prabhu. Becoming civilized requires internal work.
Requires?
Internal work.
Yeah.
Yet problems may be there, such as denial.
Sure.
Or even pathological self-centeredness. Self-centeredness. Sorry. Self-centered. Self-centeredness.
Self-centeredness, okay. Okay. What to do?
There's no question here. I think he's just making a comment.
Okay. Yeah, our mind is our biggest obstacle. And the mind is the repository of all the contamination. I mean, it's the subtle feature where the contamination rests. Keep going.
This is from Satish Bhatnagar. When someone chants with the mood of calling out to their parent, is their destination then Dwarka as a child of Krishna?
Can't guarantee that. Can't guarantee that.
This is from Amara Mataji. The constant feeling of insufficiency, how to make it spiritual so it gives enthusiasm to serve rather than anxiety and confusion?
Well, you don't have to tuck it away or hide it or look the other way or pretend it's not there. It's just the bhakti principle is to please Krishna. And as the bhakti principle becomes enlivened by proper chanting or improving qualitative chanting, then the bhakti principle will take that feeling of insufficiency and transform it into an impetus. That is, I'm recognizing I'm dependent upon Krishna, so one calls out to Krishna in that mood of dependence. It turns into an impetus, not something like a negative emotion. It's an impetus. It becomes a spiritual emotion.
That's it.
Yeah. Prabhupada ki jai.